Sir Manuel Esquivel was one of the country's leading scientists, a distinguished teacher. He served as Prime Minister of Belize for 2 terms, was appointed to the Privy Council by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who also later dubbed him a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George. Yet, he has somehow managed to maintain a relatively low profile. So who is this scientist turned Prime Minister?
I came to Belize as a volunteer teacher. Well, back then Belize was quite different. It was a much smaller community. Everybody seemed to know everybody else. I was very impressed by how relaxed everyone was. And I taught mathematics, and my original goal was to teach for a couple of years, get that experience, and then I was planning to go and get a master's, but I never got to that stage. I met him because he was a physics teacher and I was a math teacher, and I taught at Palotti, he taught at SJC. And often the teachers would get together to go on trips or for various activities. So I met him essentially through being a teacher. At the time, people told me he was the most eligible bachelor in Belize. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But yes, you know, he's always very quiet, but very thoughtful. And so I think he impresses most people that meet him.
So what led to a nationally respected scientist onto the political stage?
And I immediately saw the conflict between the truth of science and the propaganda of politics. And they just don't fit, you know. And I thought I could offer something being in both worlds. You know.
We both felt that there was so much that should be done in Belize and could be done, and that people that had something to offer had almost a duty to offer it. And so when friends of his, at the time, the People's United Party was the only party that had ever been in power. And they'd been in power essentially since self-government. And so it was already 20 years. And a lot of people were concerned that without a real opposition, there was nothing to check wrong directions, a tendency towards one leader, anti-democracy. And so I think the people that recruited Manuel, that was their major concern. And at the time, the opposition parties were very weak. There was Philip Goldson's NIP, but there was a breakaway faction led by Dean Lindo, the PDM. And neither of them, I mean, it would be a hard thing anyway, but with 2 opposition groups, there was no way they could win. And so the new grouping, which called itself the Liberal Party, was not affiliated with either of these 2 groups. And so they hoped to bring in new people, and in the end, yes, they coalesced to form the UDP.
Basically, it was Paul Rodriguez and Mr. Nestor Vasquez, you know, because we were part of a group called the Liberal Party. And that was good because it started off with a pipe dream. Now I know, but it was a pipe dream. It gradually disappeared. You were left with the pipe.
he took the decision to become full-time chairman of the UDP. Now that was a decision because actually he had to resign, and so we only had my salary because it was an unpaid position. A few supporters did rally round to put together a small honorarium, but still, that was a big decision because by then we had 3 children, so it was quite a big decision. Yeah.
I got acquainted with Manuel in the formative years of the UDP. My impression of him then and my impression during the years that he has managed this country is that he has been able to not mix his emotion with his ability to manage the country. We had a group of people that I think has shown themselves to be nationals more than political persons. We had people like Ned Vasquez, who, like myself, were the silent supporters of the group, led by the likes of Big Tom, Mr. Paul, and Ken Tillett, and a lot of other very good Belizeans.
He was very humble. I can recall doing cleanup campaigns with Mr. Esquivel, with Honorable Colonel Thompson, and also the city mayor, who was Paul Rodriguez at the time. I was a member of the Youth Popular Front, and we used to go on Sundays to clean the city when we first got into the city council. And he took those bundles of dirt and just threw them into the back of the garbage truck. And I was impressed at his humility. And I knew that something good was going to happen down the road with Mr. Esquivel. While in opposition, he traveled throughout the length and breadth of the country with us to make certain that women were afforded their rightful place in the party, and if we should become government, that we would be included in the decision making. We garnered some candidates, and also I found myself a constituency. He encouraged me. He was all for women to come forward and for them to play their part with no exceptions, or nothing that would say that we're making special ways for women to enter politics. You were supposed to be as good and better as the men. And we rose to that occasion because I myself won my seat, and a year after, for the town boards, we had 9 other women that were elected countrywide.
The momentum from the women and youth movement that yielded positive results in the municipal elections carried over to the general elections, and Dr. Esquivel was able to lead the UDP to office. Unfortunately, both times the party won, they assumed control of an economy in shambles.
What we inherited when we came into power, the day we took office, the IMF came to the government and said, listen, this is what you're going to do. So immediately there was no room to develop. They said, this is the state you're in, and this is our solution. And so that created austerity at the beginning, a lot of discontent, and later on down the line, things like the super bond still haunting us, where rash decisions are taken to achieve something for today, not recognizing you're making it worse for tomorrow.
We should be grateful for the time that he has managed this country. he came along at the right time, and there were some mistakes, but I think the majority of things that he has done has been beneficial to all concerned, not only to the upper echelon, but also to the ordinary people.
So I had very little interest in propaganda, and for many people that was a handicap, because people love propaganda, you know, but and you needed to convince people, yes, we're doing the right thing. But you're doing the right thing, but not for your own benefit. You know, as a politician, you should be doing things what is going to be the best thing for people.
During the time of the retrenchment, he did not show how much it affected him. But I am certain with my dealings with him that it affected him gravely.
He tends to keep things in a box, but yes, you could tell he was worried, because sometimes as a politician you have to take decisions looking at a long term. But on the other hand, you know there will be short-term pain, and you don't want to impose that pain, but you know that if you don't, then there'll be longer-term pain. So yes, I think it bothered him sometimes that he had to take decisions that would hurt certain people.
The constraints of the IMF limited the financial flexibility of his administrations, but that did not prevent Dr. Esquivel's government from pushing the most aggressive physical and social infrastructural upgrade program the country had seen in his time.
I, for one, would say that I owe him a great debt of gratitude for his kindness towards the people that I represented. He saw the plight. I was able to put together my plans. Of course, when you're dealing with Mr. Esquivel, you have to be thorough. So you make your plans, you present things that are doable, how you're going to do it, and what is it you need. Once he is clear on that, I had absolutely no problem in convincing him that this was what I needed to improve the quality of life for the people that I represented. So then I was able to get from him the completion of the Guelizaraga High School building, a daycare center, all the land reclamation starting west of Central American Boulevard, access roads with water and electrification. I was also able to get a comprehensive survey of the area where 300 people were given their lease for their. I was also able to move 2 legislations during the time in the House, which would have been the sexual harassment bill, and the Committee for Families and Children was able to produce, along with national consultation, the FACA, the convention, the National Committee for Families and Children embarked on a national consultation to bring about our legislations in line with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And in so doing, we came up with this legislation that became the Families and Children's Act. So in essence, we were able to fulfill in one area or secure the future of our families and children.
And he tried his very best to put the financial footing of this country on a firm footing. One of the clear examples is when he analyzed the financial situation that the country was in, he made, as I said, those tough decisions. But some of the good things that showed that he wanted to make sure that investors did not get control of the 3 facilities, the utilities, was when he made sure that For example, BTL had a golden share, and later on the other party had sold that out. One thing that I can say for the present leader, which will be part of his legacy, is the return back to the country and the people of the 3 utilities. A lot of us don't know that Belize is one of the few countries that was able to get back those utilities, and befuddled a lot of people in the way they are being administered, because people thought that they were going to be administered the way it used to be administered under the colonial system. And we can proudly say today that our 3 utilities are properly managed, and they're properly managed by locals. And the profit from the utilities, all 3, remain in Belize.
I owe a great debt of gratitude to Mr. Esquivel, to Prime Minister Esquivel, because he was compassionate. I was able to communicate with him with ease, and he was no nonsense. So you know when you were approaching him to get things done for your area or for your ministry, that you had to be very concise. And once you gave him what he was expecting of you, he cooperates and supports. And I was able to conquer that, and I think that's the reason why I was able to get so much done in that period of time that I was allowed to serve with him. And I thank him for the confidence he has shown and given me the opportunity to be a part of his cabinet. And I'm grateful for Helpage to honor him on this occasion. And I wish him all the best. And I will be forever grateful for the opportunity he gave me to improve the quality of life for the Belizean people, especially those that I served.
I think he's a man of great integrity, a very, very firm moral compass. He knows what's right, he knows what's wrong, and he's very careful not to cross the line. And one thing that he was very certain of, and I think anyone should be aware of, you don't generally go from being a good, upstanding person and suddenly you wake up the next day and you're mired in corruption, and it's a process. Usually it starts out that someone says, oh, why don't we do A? And A is a little unsure, but you know, nothing much. But then the problem is, once you've done A, you go on to do B. So the time to look where you're going is that first step, because once you've made that first step, the danger is you'll continue.
I know that the best days are yet to come. But I think if they could flush their minds of the propaganda and try to look at it from scratch, whatever they may see as the sins of the past, look at life as you're now facing it and what can be done. If you have some favorite politicians, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have to have in your mind, if we're beginning to topple, it's now our turn to straighten things out. Not to give up, but to, in early days, say, we're getting into this with the idea we're going to straighten the house.